welcome to Served Up. This podcast is where hospitality meets leadership and where we take an honest look at the business of beverage. I'm Bridget Albert. I've spent my career building cocktail programs, mentoring rising talent, judging competitions, and advocating for women in our industry. I'm joined by my co-host, Eric Heemer, one of only 5 people in the world to hold both the Master Sommelier and Master of Wine titles. His depth of knowledge and global perspective brings tremendous insight to every conversation. This is Served Up. Hey, y'all, it's Bridget here. Eric and I had the opportunity to sit down with our friend Ian Burrell. If you don't know Ian is the only folks, global rum ambassador. He shares his journey as the global rum ambassador and what it takes to represent rum on a world stage. He dives into the artistry and tradition behind crafting exceptional rum, highlighting both classical techniques and modern innovations. Ian also explores how rum culture connects with people across continents and how storytelling elevates the spirit's experience. Finally, he offers insights for enthusiasts and professionals alike on appreciating, tasting, and sharing rum in meaningful ways. So sit back, relax, grab yourself your favorite Jamaican rum, and enjoy the show. Ian, welcome to Served Up. Eric and I are just thrilled to have you on the show today.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be there virtually over there in the States.
It's always nice to see your face. But, let's start at the very, very beginning. What was it like for you growing up, Ian? How did those early years, shape you before you entered the world of hospitality?
Well, I mean, I've always been around hospitality just because my parents, they were very hospitable at home. Anyone who came to the house, it always seemed like there were going to be drinks, there was going to be food being offered. My parents are Jamaican, so that was part of that culture to be hospitable when you come in. So I was always around that. But getting into the restaurant and bar industry, it was actually by accident, pretty much. It was a good friend of mine. We were just trying to make some extra money in between what we call it, high school and college as such. So I was just about to join a drama school, one of the top ones in the UK, Central School of Acting, and wanted to take like 6 months off before going into further education. And my best friend taught me into becoming a bartender. Well, actually a waiter first in a restaurant. I was like, why? He says, you meet loads of people, make good tip, make some money. And making money was a big thing for me because I didn't have any. So yeah, I became a waiter for about 3 days after dropping a pizza on someone's lap. And I was too embarrassed to continue doing that. But the bar manager loved my enthusiasm while I was there training and said, why don't you come work behind the bar? And taught me a couple cocktails and the rest was history. And became a bartender.
That's fascinating. Ian, I have to ask you though, before that, were you born in Jamaica or were you born in England? Where did you grow up?
I was born in England to 2 Jamaican parents, but my mom used to jokingly say that in this house is Jamaica and out there is England. So it felt like I was in Jamaica as such, because we had Jamaican food, we smoked Jamaican patois with the accent as such. So it felt like being in Jamaica when you was at home as such. But I have citizenship for both countries, so I'm as much Jamaican as I am British.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Do you remember your very first meaningful encounter with rum? What was in the glass and what clicked for you? What drew you into this wonderful category?
I remember the story. I don't remember my encounter. I know the encounter that I was told to me, and that was by my mom and my grandmother. And that was when I was about 4 days old. A little nip of rum to help me sleep or put me to sleep, as the Jamaicans will do. My first actual encounter that I do remember, funny enough, I was making, because I couldn't afford squash and things like that, for a beverage, it would have been like rum, sugar. Sorry, not rum. Freudian slip there. It would have been water, lime, and sugar, just like a lemonade, as you guys call it. But I used to see these little miniature bottles of rum in my mum's drinks cabinet, and everyone was drinking them. And so I was like, inquiring what they were. And next thing you know, I was pouring a little bit into my lime, sugar, and water just to give it a little bit more flavor. And what I didn't realize back then, I was only 8 at the time, so I don't encourage this, but I didn't realize I'd made a punch. I didn't even know what punch was, but I was making rum, lime, sugar, and water, even in a mild form as such. And that was my first encounter of rum. And it was Jamaican rum, of course, and it was a 126 proof.
Oh my
The
goodness.
actual
Yeah.
rum.
That
Ray
was quite
nephew.
an introduction.
It was a
At,
serious introduction.
at what point did you realize there were different types and styles of rum, from white rum to
Oh, that
añejo
didn't
and
come
dark
until
rum?
yeah, that didn't come until later on in my career. By then, I've already become the UK's first rum ambassador or rum brand ambassador, and one of the first spirit ambassadors in the UK. And this was during the mid-90s. And while I was working with a Jamaican rum company called J. Ray and Nephew, who owned Appleton Estate, I realized I knew a lot about Jamaica rum or their rums, but I didn't know much about other rums. At that time, we were categorizing rums as white, gold, and dark, which we realize now is pretty much meaningless. It's just what the rum looks like. It doesn't tell you anything about the actual rum. So it was only discovering different types of white rums, the flavor profiles, and how they were made that I really, really then dove into the categories to realize to let people other people know that there are different styles of rums, let alone rums made from different raw materials.
Yeah, very interesting. So rum obviously has a long history going back to
Yeah,
the colonial period
correct.
in the
Yeah.
Caribbean.
Hmm.
And I find it to be, I love history first and
Yeah.
foremost.
Yeah, I
So
Yeah,
do.
me
I'm
too.
always happy to talk about the history of such
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah.
I have to ask you, what
Hmm.
captured your imagination early on? The history of the diversity
Yeah.
of styles, the cultural
Yeah.
roots? What was it that
Yeah.
really grabbed you?
It's probably a combination of all. In school, I wasn't a big fan of history. I think maybe because the history we were being taught wasn't really appetizing to me. But as I got more into the drinks industry, I started getting more into history because when it comes to rums, because as you said, rums are connected to the historical, colonial, historical past, especially of Britain, and where Britain left their imprints in, say, the Caribbean, they also left rum. And when they took it around the world, they took rum around the world. So there's a lot of historical moments that center around points in the history of rum. And that's how I got fascinated in the history. I started seeing dates and automatically making connections to either a rum brand or something that happened within that country or that island connected with rum as such. And that's how my love for history came about. So that's where I really dove into the whole learning about the history of rum, where it was, where it is today, and where it's going in the future, and drawing from the past to see how that influences the present as such. So yeah, my love for history, especially rum history, has come from the rum brands and just and trying to become a better rum ambassador when I'm telling stories.
I'd love if you can share just a little bit of the history of rum with us, Ian. I know this isn't a class or
Yeah.
anything like that, but rum has had both a problematic, right,
Yes.
history, and
Yeah.
it's also self-corrected, right,
Correct.
and is
Yes.
something to
Correct.
be
Yeah.
celebrated. But maybe in a
Hmm.
nutshell, just a quick kind of elevator pitch of the
Yeah.
history of rum. Can you tell our
Yeah.
listeners because I think that they'd be very curious.
Yeah, sure. Well, first thing I always love to address, and as I always would say to people, that all rums have to be made from sugarcane, but not all sugarcane spirits are rum. So prior to any sugarcane spirit being called rum or being connected to rum, there were sugarcane spirits being made. Say like in South America, you had cachaça, as the Brazilians call it, their sugarcane spirits, very similar to rum, but different totally spirit. You had in Asia, they were drinking spirits like Batavia Arak, which would have been in Indonesia and Java, which would have been another cane spirit, but again, not rum. Where we connect rum or where we talk about rum in the guise that we see it today, we attribute that to the island of Barbados because that's where all the documents go back to the word rum, which actually was a word from Devonshire in England. There was actually a word called rum bullion, which meant an uproar, a tumult, lots of noise, being boisterous as such. But if you know Caribbeans, we're very laid back. And a 4-syllable word, rumbullion, is too long, a longer word to describe our favorite tipple. So it's condensed down to the word rum. And there was evidence of that. In New England, they tried to ban Barbados rum and rum. I think I think Massachusetts, they tried to ban rum in 1650s. So we know it was actually being called rum and being served as rum at that particular time as such. But of course, Barbados waters or Barbados rum or rum as it was called was very popular around the mid 17th centuries. And then that connection between New England, which was what you guys call Boston and places like that, and Philadelphia, and they were connected to Barbados. Of course, Virginia was connected to Barbados, and rum was regularly traded from Barbados to America. And at that particular time, rum was America's drink until that big fight happened between Americans and the English, the War of Independence. And the Americans said, oh, we ain't drinking none of that English rubbish anymore. And a lot of rum sales started going down, but there was still local rums being made. Medford, they were making local rums, but a lot of the Caribbean rum then went to Europe, to the so-called motherland, England, Britain, and other parts of the world. So yeah, rum, as I said, is a historical spirit. But it can be, if we're talking about the history of rum, it would have started on the island of Barbados, circa around 1640s and 50s. That's where a lot of the documents have been traced back to. But I always like to say that I think a lot of people are drinking the fiery cane spirit, which was called Kill Devil before rum. They were probably drinking that and probably during the 1630s and early 1640s, and nobody thought about writing it down and writing down recipes or making documents about making this. So I reckon it was even 10 years before then when they realized, oh, you know what, maybe someone should write this down and say, this is rum and this is where it's made and this is what we drink. So, but yeah, most of the historians will say, yeah, around the 1650s, rum would have been connected to, the history of rum would have been connected to the island of Barbados.
It is so incredibly fascinating. And I do think, I seriously do think that spirits history should be taught in schools because it's
I
so
agree.
connected with
Yes.
culture and politics
Yes.
and how governments came to be, and we don't talk about
100%.
it. And how
Yeah.
much more fun would history class be in high school?
100%. Yeah.
We learn about
Yeah.
rum. I'm just
And the other
saying,
thing as well,
man,
I think as well, there'll be a better respect for spirits as well. So there'll be
1000%.
less chance for people to abuse it as they get a little bit older. Because a lot of people that do abuse alcohol and spirits, sometimes they're doing it either from a backlash of some form. It might be the parents are trying to stop them or stifle them from drinking. Don't do this, don't do that. Or it's just curiosity and unawareness, or not having a mentor to actually show you, or maybe this is the way you drink and you sample and you taste and you're not really abusing, because it is, I always say alcohol, and I say this in a lot of my 7 presentations, alcohol is the most dangerous drug in the world for me personally. And the reason why is because it's legal.
Yeah.
It's taxed, so the government makes
Mhm.
money from it. And it's accessible as well. So that's what makes it, for me personally, a very dangerous drug as such. So we have to be aware of that. So I fully agree with you. If we were taught at a younger age more about spirits and spirits history, it would be a much more fun journey.
And about wine and about beer and just
Yeah.
all of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it's just so ingrained in cultures and we don't usually find out about it until,
True.
you're in
True.
college or university and then you lose your mind. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But, you
That's
know,
true.
Ian, you have educated tens of thousands of people around
Hmm.
the world on this
Hmm.
topic. What is one or even some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about the rum category?
Okay, yeah. I mean, there's quite a few, but the biggest misconception is that rums don't have any rules or regulations, or they're not governed. A lot of people feel it's just a wild, wild west. You just get some sugar cane, crush the juice, make rum from the juice, or you boil that juice and turn it into a syrup, make rum from that, or you extract the sugar crystals from the syrup and then make rum from the leftovers, the molasses, and that's all it takes to be a rum, as such. But it's a lot more governed and more regulated than that. In fact, most countries in the world that make rum will have a set of rules and regulations, parameters, geographical indications, PDOs to define or to protect their style of rum making. So that's one of the big misconceptions. And it doesn't help when you have organizations like, for example, like TTB in America, that will define rum as just a cane spirit, a spirit from cane. It's 80 proof, distilled to less than 190 proof. And that's pretty much it. There's no other subtle rules or regulations. It's not like whiskey where you have the definition for Scotch, where the TTB will say, well, the rules for Scotch is what Scotland says. The rules for Irish whiskey is what the Irish say. The rules for American whiskey is what we say in America, whether it be Kentucky bourbon, whether it be rye, as such. When it comes to rum, there is no rules. There is no rules accepted. But when you go to Jamaica, Jamaica have a set of guidelines to define what a Jamaica rum is. You go to Martinique, there is quite a strict guideline, just like cognac, to define what a Martinique rum is. Same as in Guadeloupe, but those rules are not respected in certain territories around the world, and that breeds that misconception that rum has no rules. Can you imagine if America tomorrow basically said that all Jamaica rum can only be labeled Jamaica rum? It follows the rules of Jamaica, which means now there is rum and there is Jamaica rum. And that's how rum should be looked at, because there's whiskeys and then there is American whiskey. There's whiskeys and there's Scotch. There's whiskeys and there is Irish whiskeys. And that's how rum should be perceived and seen. So until that happens, until they get the GIs or the PDOs or the PGIs respected and enforced in certain territories, it will be seen as the Wild Wild West. So that's probably the biggest misconception about rum, is that it has no rules and regulations and it's just white, bold, and dark.
Yeah. Can you just
Very
really quick
interesting.
tell our listeners with the PDO, what that means, a PDO, or
Right, yeah,
all this,
yeah.
because
So
some of them are not in our industry, are just
yeah.
curious.
Yeah, sure, sure. So PDO will be a protected, designated area as such, and that will be the reason why it's fairly strict is that everything to make that particular product has to come from that protected area. The raw material has to come from there. The know-how, pretty much from scratch, from start to finish, everything has to come from that particular area. Now, a looser, I mean, for example, think of a cognac. The grapes have to come from there. The water come from there. The stills are there, and everything's made in cognac. Where you have something a little bit more loose, which we call PGI, protected geographical indication, which is just talking about the geography of a place. So the raw material doesn't have to come from there, but it has to be made there. So think of Swiss watches, and the iron's not coming from Switzerland, but it's been made in Switzerland, and the know-how is inside there. Jamaica has a GI, so the molasses, some molasses will come from Jamaica, but some molasses will come from abroad, but it has to be made in Jamaica. They have to use water from Jamaica. It has to be aged in Jamaica. Same as Scotland. Scotland, a lot of the grain is coming for Scotch whiskey is coming from outside Scotland, but the know-how and aging your whiskey for 3 years minimum and making it in one single distillery, that is done in Scotland. So what that tells the consumer is that the prestige of the product has been protected. The know-how has been protected. You know what you're buying. It's coming from that particular area. So that's loosely the PGIs, which are protected geographical indications, or the PDOs, which are a little bit more stricter, where everything has to come from that particular area.
Sort of along the same lines of conversation, Ian, you're turning it back towards my area of expertise, which is wine.
Oh, yes.
And and that
You're the guy we
term
need to speak to.
and that's a term that is often mystifying to many people, which is terroir. And I think that,
Yes, yes.
wine
Yeah,
conversations always come around to terroir, but we
yeah.
don't hear it as much in spirits. Maybe with
True.
the
That's very true.
difference between Isla and Speyside, et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera. But
yeah.
where do you see terroir expressing itself most clearly in rum?
I think terroir is quite important in rum, but again, you're right. It's a domain that wine is owned as such, and we've only recently really started talking more about it in rums. I see it more in rums of French origin, rums made from fresh cane juice, just because, especially in Martinique, just because all the sugar cane is coming from that particular island. There are several varieties of sugar cane there, all have different flavor profiles, nuances. And when that's crushed, you're capturing that grass, you're capturing the flavor of that particular area, because the law is in Martinique, you have to start fermenting within 24 hours of crushing your cane. So again, you're capturing all of that natural flavor inside there. And once you distill it, once it's fermented for a day, day and a half, 2 days, you've created a wine as such. So each wine will be different from the north part of Martinique to the south part of Martinique. There'll be some that'll be a little bit more salty, some that may be a little bit more earthy, some will have a bit more grassiness inside there. And then when you distill that, you're concentrating those flavors. So that's where the terroir will take place. It'll take place in the wine, of course, which I personally think is one of the most important parts of making rum, because that's the only time you make alcohol in fermentation. So when you distill it, you're not making alcohol, you're just purifying it. You're concentrating those flavors inside there. And speaking to Her Royal Highness, the Dr. Joyce Spence from Appleton, she always says one thing we forget when we talk about terroir is the local know-how, the local knowledge People that make the products have been doing it for years. It's been passed on. That's never measured. And no one ever thinks about terroir, the people, the resources that actually make the products over the course of time. And I've always taken that on board when she told me about that, and she was schooling me on terroir of Jamaica rum as such. But yeah, it's something that doesn't get spoken about in spirits as much, but I think it is an important part, especially when we are talking about fermentation and the concentration of those natural flavors.
Yeah, very, very true. And for those that may not be familiar with the term terroir, it's what the British like to call a sense of place,
Yes.
which sort of aptly describes a product that comes from a certain place. Like in wine, we
Yeah.
talk about Chablis, and it's the cool
Yeah.
climate and the chalky soil. And the
Hmm.
same thing, I think, translates very easily, especially to Martinique rum, as you just mentioned, which is
Yeah.
fascinating. And I think we
Yeah.
could talk about that for hours and hours. But
Oh man, yeah.
I
I mean,
want to.
even
I'm
something
sorry.
as far as the water they use for fermentation and for watering down has to come from that particular region, that particular area, and that's when water is going to be different in every country. Such so, the terroir is playing an important part of of creating that final spirit.
That's very true. And speaking of that, is there a particular pH that is ideal for the production, pH of the water that's ideal for rum production? Does that come into play?
Oh, that might be above my pay grade. I would say 7.
Hard water versus soft water?
Hard water, soft water. I would say what's called as soft as possible as such. Whether it be, I'm trying to go back into my memories now of chemistry, which is it going to be more alkaline or more acid? But when it comes to pH, but yeah, 7.
Yeah, there you go. And along those same lines, what parallels or perhaps contrasts do you see when you're educating consumers about rum versus wine?
Well, the parallels are the fact that we have to make a wine or a beer. Some people call it beer. I mean, or the wash, as we like to call it. The similarities are there. You've got your raw material. You're fermenting those natural sugars with the various different types of yeast, whether it's a natural fermentation or you're using a cultured strain of yeast, or just a simple baker's yeast as such. So you are making a wine of some form. And then you're concentrating that. You're burning the wine. Sounds like brandy, burnt
Yeah.
wine. You're burning the wine to create your rum. So the parallels are there when I talk about wines. Although my wine knowledge is definitely not even an iota of your knowledge in that time. I just like to drink wine as such. But just the basics, yeah, just the basics of getting really good fruit, good raw materials, good fermentation, as well, and ideal standards to create what's called your beer, your wine before you then distill it.
Perfect. Thank you.
That is so interesting. I love this dynamic, by the way.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
cool. It's so cool. Uh, you know, when we started the show, you gave us your full title, and you are
Hmm.
the global ambassador for the
Yeah,
whole category of rum. What the
I
heck?
know.
How did that
Greedy.
happen, Ian?
I gave it to myself.
Ah!
Yeah. So I remember getting my first business card. I think it was about 96 when I got given a business card. So I was working 3 days a week behind a bar and 3 days a week as a brand ambassador. So I had a business card going into other bars trying to sell in Jamaica rum or Appleton and Ray Nephew as such. So it had Ian Burrell, J. Ray Nephew, rum brand ambassador. And I was like, oh, yes, business card. I was then asked in about 2003 to help launch Appleton in New Zealand. And while I was out there, I was being asked questions by loads of bartenders about different styles of rums, which I didn't have the answer to. And there was no internet. Well, there was internet, but very slow. And there was no social media back then to actually go in there and tap into and Google and find out the answers for some of those questions. So I had to try to find out a person to actually teach me these things. And there weren't many people around that really mastered the arts of rum as such. So I said, I need to be that person. I'm going to be that person to go around learning about rum and giving that information out there because it's just not there as such. And so that's when I decided to become an ambassador, just because I was traveling around and I had my virtual rum embassy. Didn't have any four walls. I just had a virtual rum embassy. I called myself an ambassador for rum as such. And in 2007, when I launched the world's first international rum festival, I then called myself the UK rum ambassador because I was promoting rum across the UK. And it was after that first year of having all these brands from different parts of the world there and people saying, well, you travel a lot about rum, talk about rum. And I'm like, yeah, I'm more of a global. Yeah, I'm the global rum ambassador. And that's when I started calling myself the global rum ambassador. So I gave myself my own title and it stuck. And fortunately, a lot of the brands actually say, well, you've earned it. So we're going to continue calling you that, even though you're self-appointed.
But you know what? People recognize you as that.
Yeah.
worldwide. It's incredible what you have built. I mean, it's no joke, right? I mean, that when we
Mm.
think of who is the global ambassador for rum, it's you. You did such a good job. Oh my
Oh,
God.
cheers. Thanks.
It's amazing. It's just such a cool story. Can you talk to, about the premiumization of
Yeah.
rum?
Yeah.
And has it really changed in the industry, do you see, in the most recent years?
Yeah, 1,000%. It's the two parts of the rum category at the moment that we're seeing growth and excitement, especially from a consumer's perspective. And one is spiced and flavors because they're easy variants and they're not as expensive to make as such. And then the other part is super premium. It's the big age rums. It's the ones that people have a little bit more intrinsic value. They're collecting these rums, or they see maybe other spirits as a little bit more expensive. So they're saying, oh, we're getting more bang for our buck with rum. So we're going to invest and buy in rums. So we're seeing that part of the rum industry grow as well. And that's pretty much recently, I would say like last 15 years, 15, maybe possibly 20 years. We're seeing that. And rum is starting to get to that. It's starting to grow and move towards that level it was back in the 1700s, where you had Jamaica rum was one of the most revered spirits out there in the world, where everyone wanted to actually create their own version of a Jamaica rum. And it was traded on ships. It was used as currency. It was that spirit. There were people that people, when they tasted it, they knew they were drinking a proper spirit because of the big, pungent, robust flavors. Now that was, again, back in the 1800s, 19th century, late 18th century and 19th century. But today we're seeing rums from all over the world now being premiumized, where they're extensively aged. There's a better use of wood for aging. There's more understanding about the terroirs we spoke about, the use of barrels and where to age your products as well. Certain distilleries have been marketed in a positive way, where people like, I want to buy things from there. A la Pappy Van Winkle in whiskey. We have this in rum, the Foursquare in Barbados. People see a Foursquare and like, oh, we need to buy one of those because one, we know the price is going to go up because there's only a certain amount of it available. But two, we know it's going to be consistent. We know it's going to be good as well. You have companies like Velia in Italy that have invested heavily in premium and aged rums. They've invested in one of the most revered distilleries in Jamaica now, Hamden, where yesterday, funny enough, I had a bar manager complaining to me that he has to pay £300 for a bottle of 15-year-old Hamden rum. And he was like, £100, but that's about, what was it, $380 or something like that for a bottle of 15-year-old Jamaica rum.
That's
And I looked at it and I
amazing.
said, yeah, I said, wow, that's expensive. Initially I said only for a 15-year-old. And that's because I fell into the trap of not understanding what a 15-year-old Hamden Jamaica rum is. Bearing in mind, 15 years ago, Hamden didn't make rums for themselves. They sold bulk. So now they've partnered with a European company that's helped them market and promote their product and injected money into the distillery. They can now create and age their own rums. But 15 years, to age a rum for 15 years in Jamaica, the amount of liquid you're losing for evaporation, it would take you about 35 to 40 years to lose that same amount in Scotland. So a 15-year-old rum from Hamden is quite, I wouldn't say it's rare, but it's not a mean feat to make. And the fact that it tasted delicious as a product as well. So $300 for a bottle of 15-year-old Jamaican Hamden rum, it seems expensive, but there are people there out there that can afford it. I might not be one of them, but every rum is affordable. If you don't want to buy that, there are some great Hamden rums that are $80, $100. You don't have to always drink the top premium ones, but those ones are there and they're being drunk by people that really love spirits. They love drinking neat spirits and understanding flavor and taste that Jamaica funk. They may be Isla Whisker drinkers. They may be cask strength bourbon drinkers. So they like really big flavors. So although it seems expensive, it was definitely, I think there was a lot of value there just because there is no other 15-year-old Hamden rums. But you're also seeing it for some of the newer distilleries in Jamaica, Worthy Park. They've just done their first 20-year-old. And that's going to be a big price because, again, they're losing a lot of rum for evaporation. I was speaking of Auntie Joy Spence from Appleton Rum. She was in London last year where we did a tasting and a launch of the Appleton sauce. which is the longest tropically aged rum on the market. 51 years aged entirely in Jamaica, 100% pot still. So when you're making a rum from pot still, it's a lot more, you're doing it in batches. So it's a lot more, I wouldn't say difficult, but it creates a much more bigger, robust flavor than a column still as such. And you're doing it in batches, so you have to stop and start. Where if you do it in column stills, you can continually make your rum. So it's much more expensive process. So this is 100% pot still. It's been aged for 51 years in Jamaica. The recipe to create that is almost like a lost recipe, so it can't be recreated. And naturally, the bottle costs 70,000 US dollars.
Well, how much? Say
Which
that
is like,
again.
wow.
I know.
Yeah,
I had to come up and mute. How
I think
much?
you said
70,000 US
70,000.
dollars.
How much? Come on. That's insane. Did you taste it?
So Joy,
Don't
I
tell
was
me you
one of
got
the
a
few.
bottle of that shit and you didn't put it
No,
on.
I wish. I got a small little tiny 25 mil vial of it to sample. So
Yeah,
Joy
1,000
poured out a
pounds
little
worth.
tiny bit. I had a sip. It was absolutely amazing. And then Joy said, "Do you want me to hold that vial for you?" I'm like, "No, I'm keeping that just in case I don't get it back." That's about $7,000 worth of rum there in that little tiny vial. But the reason why they've done that is because they only created 20 bottles of the product, the history about what it stands for, the fact that now, because as you said, rum can command that type of price, and the 6 bottles that were sold and that were available in the UK for, I think it was 59,000 pounds, which was about 70,000 US dollars, sold out. They sold. So there are people out there with that type of money that will buy those rums out there. Now, I'm not saying we should go to that extreme of a $70,000 bottle of rum, but there are rums out there that people are regularly buying for $200, $300, $400, where 20 years ago, for me personally, I don't think anyone would be looking to pay that type of price. So that just shows you where rums are going. As long as that value's there, that intrinsic value that people have for a certain brand, for a certain style of rum, for a certain distillery, rum will only get better and better. But we're in a golden age of rum at the moment.
Indeed. So let's switch gears for a moment, Ian, and talk about 2 subjects that are huge topics in the wine industry, and that is climate change
Oh,
and sustainability. And I'd like
yes.
to hear your view on, and let's stick with Jamaican rum
Hmm. Yeah.
to make it easy. How has climate change affected sugarcane production, overwintering of pests? What are
Hmm.
some of the topics that you're dealing with in Jamaica right now due to climate change?
Well, I mean, it's not only climate change. It's climate change. It's also, as you know, in Jamaica, we suffer every now and again. We suffer from some crazy hurricanes. We just had Melissa there that has devastated a third of the island down in the southwest. So that actually affected a lot of sugarcane production or growth on the island. There are only 2 sugarcane refineries on the island now, where back in, say, the 1800s, there would have been a couple of hundred. So it's now whittled down to 2. And a lot of that's down to price wars of sugar being bought cheaper in other areas, sugar beets being used to make sugar in Europe. So different types of crops are growing on land where sugarcane is grown. So it means now molasses is now being imported into Jamaica from other parts of the Caribbean region. But in regards to climate change, yes, different types of crops are being grown. Sugar is maybe not as prevalent as it used to be. As such, the rainy seasons, we seem to getting. I know sugarcane needs a lot of rain, but not as much rain as it's been getting over the last few years. So there definitely has been a change in the production of sugar. And just speaking to some of the guys like Worthy Park, who are one of the few distilleries that actually has its own sugarcane refinery, the quality of sugarcane is not as good. This is what some of the guys have been working there for many years have said, that the quality of sugarcane is not being as good as it has been for years, just because of the changing climate as such. So this is the reality of how the production of rum will have to change and how the price of rum will go up as well. It also means now then people are looking at other parts of the world to get sugarcane or molasses in, which again is not great for the carbon footprint to be bringing molasses in from other parts of the world to the Caribbean to make a Caribbean rum. So there's lots of different direct connection with climate change that's affected the rum industry that will drive prices up, affect employment as well. It's hard to actually pin it down on one particular thing, but there are lots of things connected with it when it comes to trying to. You mentioned pesticides and that type of stuff. You go to Haiti now; they don't use pesticides at all out there. That is probably the most organic products you're going to get probably in the Caribbean. So when you're drinking Claron, which is the Haitians' sugarcane spirit, or you're having Haitian rums out there, that's raw. But again, it's all self-sufficient because they're making small amounts. But if that becomes more and more popular, that's when we'll start to see a problem. Maybe land being overused, overworked, such maybe introduction of pesticides, which would be unfortunate to try to control certain types of crop as such. We're also looking at now how to, in the rum industry, how to produce rums in more economical ways using solar power, using wind energy as well, using wave energy, which I've seen recently. I've seen a company looking to invest in certain distilleries where they'll be connecting these buoys out, as in the life buoys out into the sea, which will create energy, which should then be funneled into the distillery and to some of the towns, local towns around. So I've heard and seen some of these conversations. So I think it's moving forward in that respect as such, but we have to find alternative ways of creating energy. I know I always like to say rum was one of the first, because once we cut our sugarcane, we burn the sugarcane to create energy to run our stills to make our rum. So we try to use everything. When we use our leftovers, our dunder, we use that and put that on the land as fertilizer to help grow the next crop of sugarcane grow again. So we're always reusing wastage in rum. But we need to be going further as we move forward.
Great. Well, that answered my next question on sustainability. You just given us alternative energy forms and reusing materials and not wasting products. Are there any other notable examples of sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, even
that.
even something as simple as capturing the CO2 from fermentation. We see a lot of that in South America, in Guyana, at the DDL, the Demerara distillers, where they do open air fermentation, but they also do closed fermentation. And by capturing the CO2, they can then sell that to some of the local soda companies. Maybe that's why rum and Coke taste so good. But it's an expensive process to do that. So I think there are going to be other ways of trying to. They need to find cheaper ways to do that, to capture that CO2. But again, it's just something as simple as capturing that from that fermentation. But in general, it's normally just reusing the wastage as fuel as such, and then reusing your leftovers, as you call sour mash in whiskey, or dunder, we like to call it in rum, back onto the land to help to fertilize the next crop, as opposed to the old days where they're just throwing in the sea, which is not good for anybody, especially the fish.
Right, indeed. You mentioned the Haitian rum industry, and the sugarcane is organic. They don't use any type of agrochemicals in the sugarcane field. Is there any type of sustainable, organic, biodynamic certification that is happening in the rum industry?
Yeah, there's a couple of brands that are now using that. One particular brand or country is in Paraguay. I've seen that where they're using certificates to certify their organic. Trying to think, I think is it Kapali? I think Kapali from Belize. Maybe Bridget can help me out there. I think they have certified. Yeah, it's Kapali as well. So I haven't been down there yet. I'm hoping to take a trip down to Belize to see their production, because I like what they're doing down there, and I'm always looking to see really great new rum stories as such. But again, it's when you're thinking about from grass to glass, you're thinking about what type of grass you're using, what type of sugarcane you use, and you want to minimize your carbon footprint. I think stories like that are great, especially for marketing, because people want to have a sense of purpose when they're having a drink. They want to feel, well, I'm drinking something that's good, and these guys are looking after the world, and I don't feel guilty now when I'm having my third daiquiri. Having this, I mean, here in the UK, we have a rum company. Oh, I'm trying to remember their name now. Husband and wife team, Gemma and Ross Wakeman. I remember their husband and wife's name, but I can't remember maybe their brand. But they're the leaders when it comes to sustainable rum making down here. And it's helped because they're now, as well as getting their British rum, because they are making rum from scratch, as well as getting their British rums into many different supermarkets, shops. They're also getting them onto airlines now, which seems contradiction, but hey, maybe people, when they're buying their tickets, they're doing the offsetting as such. But they're growing, and a lot of one of the reasons why they're growing is because of the sustainable methods of making rum, and their carbon footprints, and the message they want to say to people when they're making spirits. They want to make it as ethical as possible. Even when they're bringing their molasses in, it's all electric cars, electric trucks. They have electric bikes when they get to work and everything like that. They are trying to minimize as much of their carbon footprint as possible to make their rums. But it's starting to move forward. But again, you have to have that mindset and thought process, I think, especially for some of the newer brands, to start that from scratch, where the older brands that have been making rum for over 100, 200, 300 years, it's harder for them to catch up or to adapt just because they have processes in place that they've been doing for several hundred years.
Yeah, that
Mm,
makes perfect sense. It's
Mm,
really fun to hear how thoughtful the rum industry is and
mm,
is becoming. It's really fun to hear because I think a lot of folks wouldn't suspect it from rum itself. And so it's fun to see like how refined that it's become and how it's out there with such a great purpose as well in
mm.
so many ways. Can you give our listeners and Eric and I kind of a peek into what does your day to day look like, Ian, as a global rum ambassador? Like, what
Ooh,
projects are you working on today?
wow.
Big
Day
question,
to
I know.
day to day. I tell you, in fact, let's do a week. Let's do a week. So starting from yesterday. Yesterday, I was in, what day is it today? Is it Tuesday today? Yes. I forgot what day it
Tuesday.
was. So yes, sorry, no, day before, 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I was filming live TV. So I'm a guest on a TV show here in the UK, which is a 3 hour live show, but I'm only on for like 10, 15 minutes talking about cocktails and drinks. But it's a show that has chefs on there, celebrity chefs. It has musicians. It has
What's the
actors on
show?
there. It's called Sunday Brunch on Channel 4. So yeah, it's a magazine show. It's been going for quite a few years, and I've been on there for about 13 years now as one of the regular drinks contributors on there. So I'll go on there with three different rums. I'll make three different cocktails. I'll do a story, talk about why I created these drinks, and then the guests will try them and give their ratings on the particular drink. So I'll do that, and then I'll come back home to chill and then prepare for an event I did which was yesterday, a following day, where I'm working with a hotel chain called Sandals, a Jamaican hotel, all inclusive. Where they wanted, and with St. Lucia Tourist Board, where they wanted to create a rum experience for some of their partners. So I have to go back down to London and create a little show where I'm teaching them about how to make a punch, how to make cocktails, and having a bit of fun. We're doing a rum and chocolate tasting. So I'll do that. Then I'll come back to London. Come back home to Cheltenham and do a not a podcast, a seminar online for 400 bartenders in the States for Campari, where I'm talking about the history of Jamaica rum and talk about the nuances of rums around the world. Eventually, what we're looking to do is create a test where these bartenders will take, and 20 bartenders from the States will be taken to Jamaica by Campari because of the masterclass I've given, the masterclass that Joy Spence has given. So, but I have to prepare for that, then deliver that, and do that online. And although I like to be expressive, as you saw, Bridget, I like to be in front of people. It's much more challenging when you're doing it on a Zoom call to several hundred bartenders, especially when you can't answer their questions and that type of stuff. So I'll do that, and then I'll do 2 days time. I'll be doing some interviews because I've just helped to create a rum brand for the Rolling Stones. So got interviews with press. That was an amalgamation of 4 different Jamaica rums because the Rolling Stones in 1972 created an album called Goat's Head Soup. So this rum is based on their time in Jamaica. So we had to do some photos, but I got some press interviews to do later on in the week to talk about that. And also a press trip we have to organize to Jamaica to take them down to where Keith Richards' house is in Jamaica and some of the distilleries that are involved in making this rum. And then at the end of the week, which will probably be next week, I fly to Hollywood. I'll be in America because I consulted on another celebrity rum that's been launched in Hollywood, and it's owned by Johnny Depp. So yes, I've been consulting on a new rum called Free Hearts, but we're doing the official world launch next week in LA. So I have to fly out to LA to host an MC and talk about the rum and host and conduct a tasting, do a toast with Johnny, and then on there for like 3 days, then jump on a plane and fly back to England. So that's just 1 week of,
Wow.
of a rum ambassador. And that's
Yeah,
not including sampling and tasting, drinking rums and chilling out with friends.
the best part of your week, right?
That's it.
So
But
I had
someone
another
has to do it.
question, but I'm gonna come back to it. I have to segue here for a moment since you mentioned the Rolling Stones and Goat's Head
All
Soup.
right.
You
Yeah, I know
have
you
a
like your
music,
music.
yeah, you have a musical background, and I'd
I,
love to hear a little
oh
bit
yeah,
about
oh
that.
yeah.
We've
Oh
talked
no.
about your career as a rum ambassador, but tell us about your career as a musician.
Goodness. That came about. Like, I mean, always loved music. Always loved music. There was always music in the house, and always felt I was a little songwriter. Used to write some raps, but I always like to say to people, I put the C in rap. But being a Jamaican, my type of music was more Jamaican music, sing Jay, and one of my distant cousins is a singer called Shaggy. He's from Kingston. The Burrells from my side of the family are from Maypen in Clarendon, and his Burrells are from Kingston. While I was bartending, while I was playing sport back in the 90s, I had the opportunity to write a couple of songs and perform on a track for these French producers. And I always like to say that luck is opportunity, preparation, and execution. The opportunity came. I was prepared because I'd written so many songs. I knew how to perform and that type of stuff. And when I got the opportunity, the chance, I executed, which was to do the song. And before you knew it, the song was being synchronized in different movies. It was being used in PlayStation games. It was used in a Pepsi Cola commercial in South America. I was like, what's going on here?
Wow.
This song, people loved it. People loved it. And then the next thing you know, Universal Records were like, yeah, you need to write an album. I'm like, what? An album? Are you crazy? So yeah, we wrote an album and we wrote some more songs. But all this time I was still bartending. I was still playing basketball in the UK at the time as well. I was just having fun at the end of the day. So anytime I put my mind to something, if I feel comfortable with doing it, I try to do it to my best ability. And yeah, so being on stage, performing, traveling around the world, being number one in Japan in the group I was in at that particular time in the 90s, touring around there, touring in Nigeria with Soul to Soul on stage there was great fun. But it wasn't something I loved, but it was good fun. And that's probably the reason why I didn't pursue the music career. But I still make royalties, still get publishing every time certain movies are played or certain tracks are played. So that's fun at the end of the day. But it's part of what makes it easier for me to perform on stage as a rum ambassador because of the music career and the music background.
Of course, yeah, it's a great training ground for any type of public speaking.
Oh yeah,
Do you personally
100%.
play any instruments? Do you play
No, I
guitar,
don't.
drums? No?
I can fake playing
Okay.
instruments.
Now,
Play a
given
bit
your
of drums.
Jamaican, yeah,
Yeah,
given your
play a bit of
Jamaican roots, do
beatbox.
you?
Yeah, that's it.
I'm sorry. Considering that you're Jamaican
Mm,
by culture and
yeah.
roots, do you embrace reggae, ska? What are your different
Oh,
types
bit
of
of everything.
musical?
Love reggae, love ska, love dancehall, everything. I love it when people are happy. Music just brings so much happiness to people. So if there's a smile on your face when you're listening to music, for me, it's good music as such. And reggae and ska and dancehall and lovers rock and things like that. I mean, especially in Jamaica, they bring a smile to people's faces. So I love that. And that's why really infused when they said to get involved with this Rolling Stones project, just because the fact, first of all, I didn't know they lived in Jamaica for a while as such. So it was great to be involved. But again, how they influenced and how they were influenced by reggae music with people like Peter Tosh and Black Uhuru and things like that. And Keith Richards playing guitar on a couple of those albums as well. And a lot of people didn't know. So that connection is great. So yeah, reggae music for me is the best. And it's one of our biggest exports, our most important export from the little island of Jamaica,
Yes, indeed, indeed, and loved
as well as
universally.
rum.
Yeah, and there, which is another thought. Have you ever given thought to the idea of combining your love for rum and music together into a new Ian Burrell production?
Yeah, maybe it might be. I mean, we could do something like we get some rum from maybe the Caribbean and we put it near a speaker box and we play music there and get the vibration to agitate the agitate the barrels. So it'd be baseline aged.
we, we joke about that, but you know, in the wine industry, there are many people that seriously play music to the barrels of wine as they age. And
No, I know.
I recently read something about a sake that was aged in classical music too, like on a floating
Wow.
firehouse, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Funny thing, I mean, I do get asked that question quite a lot about the whole whether you're aging on a boat or on a raft or playing music to it. But scientifically, if you think about it, I always say, imagine you get a hot cup of a hot mug of water, and you put a tea bag inside there, and the tea bag starts to infuse. You can see the infusion happening of the tea inside there. But as soon as you add energy to that, so give it a little shake, the infusion starts to happen a lot quicker. So technically, this is what's happening when you're vibrating the barrels or adding energy to the barrels, whether it's the motion of the ocean, whether it's the vibration of music. So scientifically, it does make a difference. Whether it's going to taste better or not, that's subjective. But
Yeah.
scientifically, you once you add energy to those barrels and give it a little movement from the vibrations, then yeah, and then if you want to turn it into a marketing exercise, then yeah, why not have different types of music to influence the type of product you're creating?
We have found out that consumers will pay more money for such products too.
Correct. Exactly, and it's about getting that value.
That's right.
I think that this conversation is going in such a cool direction with the equal, love for music and the vibrations. I'm going to ask you this question because I know where Eric stands on this. Are you a Beatles fan?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a Beatles fan, but I respect the Beatles.
Okay.
I respect them a lot. Especially John Lennon. I used to love what John Lennon used to do and what he used to stand for as such. Paul McCartney as well. But yeah, I love the Beatles and respect what they did at that time.
Good answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're both
plus,
we're,
plus,
we're
even more
both
important.
Beatlemaniacs.
Yeah. Plus,
Yeah.
plus, more important, they're from Liverpool, and I'm a Liverpool supporter. So,
Oh, there you go. I knew
so
I knew
that's the
we'd
other.
get around to football sooner or later. So there you have it.
I'm glad you called it football as well, not soccer.
Yes, of
Oh,
course.
that's so
Only
good. It's so good. Ian, can you leave our listeners with a last thought? If they were going to try rum, let's say, for the very first time, what do you suggest?
A question. If they're going to try rum for the very first time, they should be, first of all, they should be honest with themselves. Do they enjoy neat spirits? Because if they don't enjoy neat spirits, trying rum for the first time, neat may be a challenge. So if they're used to drinking spirits in a cocktail, I would recommend drinking rum in a cocktail. Now, if they if they do like neat spirits, then it's what type of spirit do they like? Do they like whiskeys? What type of whiskey is it? Because there is a rum out there for anybody as long as they drink spirits. And they can appreciate that way. If they like products that are quite sweet, I mean, like some cognacs have been sweetened because by law you're allowed to add a certain amount of sugars to them, then there are rums out there that have been sweetened. So they might want to try a sweetened rum. But then they might like spirits that are naturally sweet, like an American whiskey or like some scotches from, say, from Speyside. So I would then recommend rums that are naturally sweet. And these are rums that have been aged really well, made with a lot of craftsmanship and craftswomanship as well. Like rums from Barbados, especially from Foursquare. These rums I see as naturally sweet, but not sweetened. If they like really big, heavy flavors like an Isla whiskey, then I would say, yeah, try a big, funky Jamaica rum as well from Trelawney, say from Hamden and Long Pond. If you like lighter styles of spirits, like your Irish whiskies, then yeah, or your Japanese whiskies, then there are lighter styles of rums like coming out of Dominican Republic, coming out of Puerto Rico, coming out of Cuba, although you guys can't drink Cuban rums legally.
legally.
But
Yes.
yeah, exactly. So there are different rums. There's so many different styles of rums out there from different countries around the world that will have similar profiles to some of the other spirits that a first-time rum drinker may drink. But again, it's all down to what they normally would drink. I wouldn't give someone who's never drunk rum before a Ray and Nephew Overproof, which is 126 proof unaged white rum that they would call firewater or aguardiente if you're speaking in Spanish. I wouldn't recommend that. But yeah, I would try to replicate a spirit or an experience that they've had before, whether it's neat or whether it's cocktail with a simple serve as well. Rum and ginger beer, rum and cokes are very popular and tasty. Highballs are a great way of drinking and rum. So for me, it's about the experience more so than the actual rum itself.
Very good advice. Very good advice. And it reminded me that there's so many rums to try in so little time,
Mm,
so we
yeah,
better get
true.
cracking on it.
Yeah,
And thank you
I
for
agree.
giving us this wonderful insight into the amazing world of rum. I think many
Oh,
people
wow.
don't realize just how diverse it is and how many different places make rum and how many different styles of rum there are and
Yeah.
different cocktail recipes. So gives us a lot of things to think about for the future. And
Yep.
Ian, it's been fascinating having you on Served Up.
Oh,
Please
thank you,
keep us
Eric. Thank you,
abreast.
Bridget. Yeah.
Yes, yes, you're so welcome, and keep us updated on your new projects. We'd love to hear more
Yeah,
from you in the
100%
future.
will do. Yeah, I'll make
Yeah.
sure I get a little bottle of Crossfire Hurricane sent over to you so you can do the whole music and rum thing and Rolling Stones things together, or we'll get one sent over to you.
Well, if
I
you
love
That's
sing
no
the if
it.
problem.
you sing the lead vocals, I'll harmonize.
I love it. I'll be your backup dancer. I can't
Oh,
sing,
that's perfect.
but I can
That's it.
tell
We got
you
the trio.
what, I can
We got the
dance. Yeah,
trio.
I can dance, y'all. Good dancer. I own that. And I just want to wish you just, some great health and a lot of peace. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for coming on Served Up.
No,
We can't wait to have you back again.
no, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's been great. It's a pleasure. And I have to say, I've got enough respect. I mean, Eric, I'm meeting you, I think, for the first time. Definitely have to have a conversation with you about Ron. But Bridget's a legend. A legend in the industry. I've always seen her through the years I've been inside the industry, watching what she does and that type of stuff. So for me, it's an honor just to be on here and be on the same call as you.
Thank you, Ian. Right back at you. Well, cheers to that.
Oh, cheers.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.